good. Cool. So a little bit about me. I am the former CMO of Valuer.ai, current founder of Clint Marketing and Architecture Quote. Clint Marketing is basically an agency that I have been playing around with for a while. I really like setting up marketing tech stacks. It's a ton of fun. I'm one of those technical growth marketers that really likes to dig into data, discover new tools. You'll see a ton of different tools as I kind of go through this thing. I'm going to save a little bit of time at the end, so happy to take questions as well. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I've been in the startup game for almost 12 years now. Makes me feel super old to say that. But yeah, I've been in Denmark for the last 4 years. I'm the co-founder of 6 different startups over those last 12 years. I consider myself a mentor, startup junkie, technical marketer, and growth hacker. Yeah, I do a ton of lectures, public speeches, CBS, KU, DTU, ITU, CPH Business, Nordic Growth Hackers, Hype Innovation, pretty much anything within kind of the region of Copenhagen, whether it's Tech Barbecue, Tech Festival, kind of gotten involved. I really dig this shit. And, you know, some people maybe do CrossFit or, I don't know, do fucking bird watching on the weekends. Like, this is my bird watching. So the projects that I'm working on, I've already kind of talked about Architecture Quote and Clint Marketing. I run the 2-day masterclass for growth hacking over at Talent Garden. I'm going to be helping out those guys throughout kind of the first quarter to kind of get vertically integrated. And again, I've already gone over some of the speaker stuff once more. Connect with me to get the slides. I don't always give out the slides if you're a direct competitor of me, just a heads up. Cool. So my goal for today is to provide value. I want to give everybody at least something they can immediately bring back and use, and either on their personal brand or on their company brand, get some momentum going, because I think that's what it's all about. I'm always curious to get a lay of the land to figure out how technical I should be or where I should go. But I'm curious, how many people here work on startups, small companies? Okay, a few. Nice. Okay, and how many people are entrepreneurs? Damn, what's going on now? Okay, cool. Fair enough. One of the things that I find really difficult to kind of set myself apart when everybody is using the phrase growth hacking, it stops stops having any meaning. So I define it really simply. Growth hacking is doing the most with the least amount of time and money in order to get the biggest results. So instead of a 1-for-1 approach where I'm doing stuff super manually, how can I get a 1 for 50? How can I get a 1 for 1,000, 1 for 100,000? So I want to show a couple of different ways to really start stepping up your game. I showed one of these hacks over in Malmö, and I could tell that like people were clutching their pearls because it's a little different than maybe the traditional stuff that we've seen, and it requires some flexible morals. Just reality. So whenever I try to talk to people about the difference between really good growth hackers and those that are just kind of learning, I always use this analogy. If your car breaks down and you have to bring it to a mechanic and there's 2 guys or girls in the shop working, one has read every book for the last 5 years about fixing your vehicle, but has never actually gotten under the hood, and the other one has actually fixed every single little component within your vehicle. I want the second person to work on my car because they've done the work. They've actually gone in and gotten their hands dirty. And I think the more that you actually get into different tools, different concepts, I think you end up getting a lot more value and you become a lot more proficient at your job. Last little kind of theoretical thing that I'll throw in here is marketing is all about systems, right? So the concept is really simple. If you can learn one area, one system really well, you can start applying it to all the others. So if you start with content, you can start figuring out PR and amplification. Pretty soon after that, you figure out SEO. If you understand some of the technical elements of SEO, you apply it to SEM, and so on. So I wanted to define social media algorithms because it's constantly evolving, and I think there's a ton of stuff going on in there. So let me touch on this for a little bit. So it's super frustrating as marketers that are trying to get something in the way of organic reach these days, especially on a company page. It's not happening the way that it used to. And it's because it's everybody. And there's a reason for that. We all engage less. We like less things no matter what the platform is because we don't want to give that validation to somebody, or the reality is we're just seeing way too many things to like everything all the time, all at once. Ad nauseum is a real thing. So we see too many ads, too much fake bullshit news. And the problem is there's more content constantly going out. So the reality is you're getting less impressions, less engagement overall. And with that being said, there is a greater ability to target, but what you see in a lot of these platforms is that you're getting very niche specific. That means that people are seeing stuff within their own ecosystem or stuff that's related to other people that are doing exactly the same thing, which means you're not reaching the same audience that you used to. And there's definitely a shift in behavior overall in terms of the way that we actually engage with those posts. So I always use this analogy and it always fucking falls flat, but I'm gonna go for it again. So think of algorithms as a very easy to please and engaged buffet owner. And so every time that somebody takes a little piece of a buffet offering, the buffet owner runs over and starts pushing more of those out. So when you first post anything, whether it's on your personal channels or any of the other social media channels for your company, essentially what happens is you're only exposed to a small fraction. And the more that people engage, especially early on, the more engagement you get overall, more impressions. So what used to be the case was you would get an impression rate of about 2%. So if 1,000 people like essentially your company's page, you're gonna essentially get exposed to about 200. Of those 200, how many are actually going to like and engage? And the reality is, I think you're really getting exposed to significantly less. So early engagement is super important. I'm gonna go into some of that stuff, but I think each engagement is also, it's tempered and it's weighed differently, and I wanna show what that looks like as well. So in terms of organic reach, especially on LinkedIn, a lot of the biggest players in the game, some of the most pronounced folks, so like Gary Vaynerchuk, Richard Branson, they've noted a 50% drop practically overnight only a few months ago. Essentially, they're trying to give a lot of these smaller players bigger reach within their own ecosystems, which means a lot of the biggest players out there have to rethink their game. And that's why they're telling everybody to go to TikTok or some of these other shit brands and shit platforms that nobody's on. And by the way, if my customers are on fucking Facebook, I'm posting on Facebook. Most of the people I'm trying to reach in a B2B scenario are not going to be on TikTok. So, take that with a grain of salt. Personal connections and interest relevance is super helpful, especially on LinkedIn. So if you're trying to engage people as a marketer and talking about marketing things, you're not going to be reaching as many folks that are doing front-end development. It's just the reality of things. And I want to go into niche versus broad, but I'm going to show kind of what this looks like from a grand scale. So I've already talked about the company pages being turned way down, but I wanted to show what this looks like for some of the better players that I've been aware of for a while. And actually, let me jump over to this one. So one of the companies that I've admired from afar is CB Insights. Has anybody ever heard of CB Insights? No? Okay. How about Intercom? Does anybody know Intercom? Yeah. Fuck those guys. They just like increased their pricing by 200%, by the way, which is insane. So Intercom. So Intercom has, well, that's not it. There we go. Intercom has 34,000 followers on their Facebook page. Now, if I go through and look at the engagement rates across most of their posts, you start to realize there's a pattern. So out of 34,000, 2 people like that post. Out of 34,000, hey, great, 6. 2, 6 again, 6. There's a pattern here. 4. Let's see, can I find a 1? All right, fuck it, there's 3. So, it's just one of those crazy things, and we have to realize the amount of effort that went in to put together this post, to put together the piece of content that you push through this channel. If you're only really engaging 2 people in a meaningful way, why are we spending our time doing that? And I think we all fall victim to that because the boss wants to see more engagement on social media because it's front facing and that's all that they see. But the reality is maybe it's not worth our time. And maybe we should be spending time on things that are actually more important or things that we can actually show real growth in. So I think it's super important for you guys to look at some of your competitors and see what or if they're actually getting real engagement on these platforms. So let me nerd out just a little bit and show what the Facebook algorithm looks like and kind of how it's broken down. This might be a repeat for some people, but first they take into account inventory. So inventory is essentially how many other posts that are going live at this exact moment are video, if you're posting video, are they just a pure text post? Is it imagery as well? Then they start looking at signals. Do you have a history of engaging with people? Do you have a pattern of actually getting 20, 30, 150 likes? If you don't, it's going to be significantly harder to hit those numbers on a regular basis. And then it predicts. So based on whether or not that post is asking a question, whether or not that post contains a few different key phrases that you've used in the past that have shown to have a significantly higher rating, you get a post score. And that post score dictates essentially whether or not you're going to reach people or you're going to get that two, like kind of engagement thing. Another way to look at it is EdgeRank. EdgeRank has been around for ages, and there's lots and lots of blogs written about EdgeRank, but the concept is basically an affinity score, which is your interconnection with other people that are relevant for the message that you're putting out, an edge weight, and this is comments versus clicks versus likes. So the reality is shares don't do shit these days, which is super frustrating because you're like, hey, share my post, but nobody does it anyways. It's not a meaningful engagement type thing. Likes aren't as important as they used to be, but comments are. We can see this across Instagram right now. I don't know if people are aware or have just been living under a rock. They've removed the ability to see how many likes have actually appeared on a lot of these different Instagram posts. And that makes it really difficult for a person to decide whether or not, because other people like it, I'm going to like it too. They're trying to get you to engage via comments and having a discussion, a meaningful dialogue. So the concept is really one of those frustrating things that where is this going in the future? And the reality is I can tell you where it's not going, and it's not going to be single click likes. It's going to be have a conversation with me, get involved with this discussion. So some stuff that I see all the time, but I just want to go into very briefly. So engagement bait type of stuff is not working, and you're going to continue to see brands getting published or punished for this. So share baiting, share this and, you'll get put into a list of people to be drawn for a free taco prize, or comment baiting where, writes the name of your company and, we'll share our guide with you. Fake account engagement, all that stuff is starting to dwindle and you're seeing companies get published. Here's the future and here's what actually fucking works. So Wendy's and some of these larger brands are actually figuring out that if you fuck with your customers a little bit, have a little bit of a playful way of dealing with people that come and engage with your brand, this is actually getting more shares, more engagement, and more overall kind of oomph in the market. So you can see that none of the posts that are coming from Wendy's are super hardcore selling their stuff. Stop selling me shit. Nobody wants to be sold on anything anymore. I want to be delighted. I want to be engaged. I want to have somebody make me laugh. If you start doing this stuff, you win the game. But no, nobody wants to do that because it's like, well, yeah, but I got to sell my features. Fuck your features, right? Involve your audience and solve their problems. Delight them. Make them laugh. And I think you'd be surprised how well that works. For those that have ever played in some of the spaces where a lot of the influencers live, I think there's a lot of really cool games to be played there. One of my favorites is my buddy Eric Sanchez down on the bottom right. I went to high school with this guy. So his basic thing was he would just mess with celebrities. So he started with like D-level and kind of worked his way up. And commenting on their Twitter was the direct way to engage with these people. The reality is he's based in Washington, D.C., where I'm from. He's now essentially chief of staff for Andrew Yang, who's one of the front runners for the presidential election in 2020. The reality is he got there by messing with people using Twitter and Instagram. And I think having these personal connections and commenting on people's stuff eventually gets you noticed, and there's an ask at the end. This was a post that basically we tagged everybody that we wrote about in a blog post. So the post was 25 eccentric entrepreneurs that you need to know about. And one of them was Dr. Nakamatsu. He invented the floppy disk. And of all the people, we tagged Richard Branson and Bill Gates. This guy gets back to us and how do you do? I wish to talk with you. Where are you in October? I'm coming to the US in October, which was kind of cool. I didn't expect that guy to actually reach back out. We did a little podcast with him and it was a great way for us to get involved because we engaged him on a place that maybe he actually reads those messages. So Facebook groups is kind of where I'm going with a lot of my engagement, and I'm going to show a really cool hack and somewhat for those that I'm going to call technically or tech savvy as opposed to sketchy. But let me explain why this works. There is a psychology principle called social proof. Social proof is essentially if you go down the main promenade of any city and there's restaurants on the left and the right. If you look on the right and you see an empty restaurant, and then you look on the other side and there's a packed one, inherently you choose to eat at the packed restaurant because you assume the food here must be better because everybody's over there. But the reality is it's not like either of these folks are serving poison. It just so happens that a bunch of people sat down here and then people are looking around going, all right, fuck it, we'll go to that one because it looks like it's popular. We all do that. And I think the reality is you'll see that within social posts. When there's more engagement in existence, you tend to engage more often. So I suggest creating a group. Create a group and find the keywords that are the most related to your industry. Find related areas that you can essentially grab people that are already either engaged in your product or service and pull them over to your group. And I'll show some really cool ways to go about doing that in terms of creating curated content, but you don't have to develop a ton of brand new content for these people. The reality is there's so much existing content out there. If you find a really nice way to funnel it into people and consistently repost this stuff, you're gonna win. So one of the easiest ways is either going to Reddit or Quora and asking the same basic questions to your group. So one of my favorite ways to get curated content out of Reddit, I'll show you right now, is reddit.com. So I always ask for examples. I get super weird examples. For the benefits of today, I'm just going to do esports. So I would put in whatever your industry is or whatever your niche is or whatever your product is that you're selling. I do a little search, and I'm looking for the most engaged posts within the last month. This will give me a nice little perspective of what is actually being hit, and it's already been proven via social proof that people are engaging with this stuff. So these are the articles that I want to plop in to my little group to keep people engaged. And by the way, I can schedule 50, 150, 300 at once. And this is a great job for an intern or a virtual assistant, which is $4 an hour. So pick your poison, but this is a great way to continue to put out a ton of great content using almost zero touch. Cool. So I always filter within my groups. Filtering is super helpful. If you ask 2 to 3 questions, it keeps out the riffraff, super sketchball people that are just selling their shit. And the reality is you got to get stuff in there. I would say, again, this one-for-one approach isn't going to work where you're constantly manually inserting this stuff. These are just a handful of the social tools that are available to all of us. Most of them have freemium trials, and I could put any virtual assistant on this and basically say, grab stuff from Reddit, grab questions from Quora, and continue to populate that stuff in my group. And they'll do it, and it's really easy. One of the quick things to remember that I think is super important is make sure it looks like it's either part of your company's brand or that group's brand. That means go to Envato Marketplace, get that monthly Envato subscription for $16 a month, and essentially grab a template and continue to use it so it looks like it's coming from the same place every time. One of the things that I constantly go back and forth with, remember when we looked at Intercom, was if you're gonna spend all this time to create some really great content, repost that shit. Repost it once a month. The reality is if you do 6 months of hardcore focused content, you can continue to push that stuff out every single 3, 4, 5 weeks. And it's new to everybody that sees it again, and they'll continue to like it. So one of our most popular posts when I was over at Valuer was 50 companies that failed to innovate. And essentially we would repost that thing every 3 weeks and it would continue to get tons and tons and tons of engagement. I turn every really good blog post into an ebook, and I also break out every single infographic and every single visual that we've designed as a new post to basically throw through all of these different platforms and the groups that I've created. So let me show you the article swap hack that made a few people clutch their pearls in Malmo. So this is essentially utilizing content that already exists within Facebook groups within your niche, and it's really easy to essentially find those. You can then post them as engagement bait within about 10 to 20 groups. If they get above 75 comments, you're going to swap out the original post for something that you're trying to drive traffic to. You keep it loosely related to the original post. And yeah, let me walk you through kind of what it looks like. So first, I'm going to discover groups. So this is just a list of groups that I put an intern on over the span of a couple of days. And I think we got to like 200 groups, so no shortage there. And they're broken down by different areas, so like different keywords or different focus. But yeah, 3,000 plus members is kind of the minimum that I mess with. I tend to target by industry. It doesn't matter if they're open or closed in my eyes. It's generally easier to get into closed groups if you actually answer the questions they're asking. But they must allow for anybody that's in the group to post. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting your time. So next is I curate content. So I find the most engaged piece of content that's above 70 to 100 engagements. So it's comments and likes. And I start pulling them down. I start copying the exact post and I put them into a spreadsheet just the same. Now the reality is I'm not going to post the exact same thing. I'm going to make a slightly better version of it. So this is what it looks like when you do this. Just a heads up, it doesn't work for video anymore. Facebook has gotten really good at recognizing scraped videos, so you can't do that anymore. But it does work for visuals. It does work for anything in the way of content that's written out. A lot of long story type stuff works really well. And so I take that and then I start tweaking every single post within there. New messaging, more questions, more direct questions, call to actions, emojis get tons of engagement. People stop and like, oh, what is that? I swap sometimes memes that are a bit more kind of relevant for me. More color, so red, green, blue is kind of where I'm going in terms of getting people to stop and engage. So the subject needs to be similar, but then I'm going to swap out a post that I'm trying to get a ton of traffic on, and I'll show you what that looks like real quick. So let me back out of this. And I've already pulled up a post that I got a little bit of engagement on, but I want to show you what it looks like. So yeah, I posted one of my favorite groups, SEO Signals Lab, posted a while back this long diatribe about somebody getting hit with a manual penalty. So there's that. So what I want to do is I want to edit the post. So I'll go in and edit post. And there we go. So I'll just drop out all those images. And then I want to put in a link to my blog article. So let's do architecture. Let me put the HTTP. architecturequote.com/blog. It will populate, or it's supposed to populate the preview image, and it's not. Hold on. Let me do this. Keep it simple. /blog, and I'll just take one article that I'm trying to get engagement on. Project. Copy. This is like the cooking show where I'm trying to move quickly. Cool, so the preview image comes up. I remove the URL, and guess what? That link is still there. So either way, I'm not actually not being seen as doing something kind of sketchy or sneaky, but the preview image is still clickable and still directs people over to my blog. And the reality is this works really, really well. So let me show you what that looks like. So you can do this across a number of different groups using, I always mispronounce this, Drytrix or Gitrix, whatever they call it. But I have like 50 different groups in my subscription. And so when I do post this, all of a sudden I see a lot more organic keywords ranking, and I also get a lot more traffic overall. I don't understand why I'm getting more organic keywords by doing this, but it fucking works and I'm not gonna stop. So the reality is you could do this too, and over time, here's what this looks like. You can see these huge bumps in engagement and also in traffic. And that's what I'm going for, especially if I'm an early stage brand, I'm a startup and I have difficulty bringing people that are my ideal customer profiles to my website. I'm gonna play games with this all day. And unfortunately, not everybody feels comfortable doing that. I just want people to be aware it's there. And you know, you have to measure your own morals and figure out what you like, but I honestly love doing this. One thing that I continue to go into in deep detail is stop boosting stuff. It's a giant waste of time. You don't get as much flexibility with the targeting, and it's overall just a total waste. So like the old way of doing this was on the first day, boost or promote to all the people that have already liked your page. Great. Second day, then you boost to a warm audience, friends of those that have liked this page. And then the third day, you pick a cohort and you target them. That was the old way of doing it. Now you can do custom audiences targeting and basically convert those that are already kind of coming to your website via the Facebook tracking pixel into real, actual engaged people on your social media platform. So go to Ad Manager, create a new campaign, set the objective for engagement, define your audience. So you're going to choose a custom audience, and then you select post to boost as an ad. So you're selecting the content of that post and you're making that into a new kind of campaign. Yeah, you can do lots of different custom audience targeting. You can really get super clever and creative with this, but this actually works. And it's way better than just doing the standard boost, and boosting is lazy. Cool. So LinkedIn tips. I am a huge proponent of getting personal branding out of LinkedIn, but I also want to show some stuff that's super helpful for those that are trying to get their own company pages engaged. So the reality is, when I was posting through Valuer, I was seeing very little engagement on the page other than the people that work there. And you can see that across any page that you're managing, most of the time it's people that work there unless you're promoting. We're back to like the old days of newspapers. Like, hey, if you want to put a message out to the world, like, hey, room for rent, you're going to pay the newspaper to do that. The social media platforms are no different. So company pages are not getting the same level of engagement. Therefore, I have to promote like it's my own brand. Well, that's weird. Okay, cool. So when I am tagging, tagging is super relevant. I keep it to 5 as a max. I can continue to tag people in the comments, but 5 is my maximum. I tend to focus on C-level people. I don't tag big Fortune 500 companies or the biggest influencers out there because it actually pushes my post down, which is super frustrating. And people that are relevant, obviously, it's incredibly helpful. Hashtags, it's always been this really unknown quantity. The magic number for these is 3, so anything more than 3 and you start seeing a decrease by significant percentages. You can add more within comments, and profile keywords is obviously where you want to go. Honestly, I've seen a ton of engagement off of using LinkedIn, marketing, and presenter. So those are my favorite ones, but use your own judgment on that. I think, yeah, links. So links is kind of what I went into very briefly with that hacking of social groups thing. So you can see these are 2 different posts. One included a link and one did not. So LinkedIn automatically changes every link to its own kind of bit.ly type of link changing structure. And the problem is LinkedIn is trying to keep people on the site so they can show them ads. So don't put anything in the way of a URL inside of your post. But if you are allowing it to populate a preview image and you delete the link right after you post it, you're solid. So bear that in mind when you're trying to post. There's a big difference in engagement when you're trying to post links versus just anything else that's out there. Cool. Other factors. I've had a decent amount of success with using emojis. Oh, this is super annoying with this little click thing. I've used a fair amount of emojis in my posts, and I find that emojis tend to get a lot more engagement. Although it, to some people, might look a little kidsy, the reality is it works. So I would continue to encourage people to use lots of emojis and continue to play games with that and see what happens. So what happens when people pick up these techniques and start using them for their own kind of devices? I'll show a case study of what this looks like. Now, there is no such thing as duplicate content when it comes to LinkedIn or Facebook. So what you end up getting is somebody that posts a really heartfelt little story about engaging with their boss, and the kind of lesson of the story is don't forget where you came from, which is cool and great and good on him for posting something that was heartfelt and a narrative. But the reality is, as soon as somebody sees that, hey, somebody can get 38,967 likes and a shitload of comments, then I'm going to do the same thing. So people started copying and pasting the exact post. And it got out of control where other people were like, oh shit, that works. I'm going to do it too. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Somebody created an article, a Pulse article, and did the same thing on LinkedIn. And it's like, how lazy are we getting? I think this is a bit of douchebaggery in and of itself, is somebody's tagging the original author and trying to piggyback off of their original engagement while posting the same status. And fuck this guy. So somebody basically goes, yeah, same thing. And take a look at my products. So essentially posted pictures of their products at the same status. So, this is more of an American analogy, but if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So I think there's always a gray area with this stuff. There's rules. Look at how fucking uncomfortable the room got. I think there's something to be said for finding ways to work around this stuff. So a quick case is Sean Avery. Sean Avery is this guy. They almost won basically the NHL playoffs because this guy discovered that there was no rule in terms of blocking the goalie by facing him and distracting him. They had to stop the game and actually create a brand new rule in order to thwart this behavior because nobody had ever done it before. And the reality is it worked. They scored a goal out of this bullshit move. Right? The reason that you see in the NFL coaches hide their mouths is because people had basically big old telephoto lenses and binoculars and were lip reading to know what play was going on the field before the ball got snapped. People want to engage with this stuff. People want to find the next edge, and that will always be the case. That's human nature in general. But I think there's another way to look at this. For anybody that's seen this movie Moneyball, it's essentially about how do you apply data to something that never had data applicable to it before. And the reality is when somebody did that, they won the game. So think of these hacks as something like that, where 5 years from now, 10 years from now, everybody's going to be doing this. So how do I find the best way out there to feel comfortable with doing this, but also be able to win the game? So a couple other quick hacks that are using some tools that I absolutely love. Enter Lempod. Lempod is one of the fastest and best ways to get that early engagement. Lempod basically is an extension that you install and allows you to create pods or groups of people that are similar to you that will immediately automatically like and also comment on anything that you post on your personal account on LinkedIn. And the reality is that first hour is that witching hour. So if you get 30 likes within about 10 minutes, all of a sudden that post gets 10,000 impressions, which is way more than you would normally get. So essentially it's a give and take because you have to engage with other people automatically and they have to engage with you. So you can create your own pods with people on your team, people in your local area, but it does work. And there are alternatives to this. The old-fashioned way is using Slack. I definitely started using social horsepower, but it's really cool. It allows you to basically tailor the content of the comments within this section and set when those posts actually go out. So comments every 20 seconds, so it fools LinkedIn's algorithm to think that it's real. Another really cool hack that if you want to get your hands dirty is Phantom Buster. There's some amazing shit coming out of Phantom Buster. So I am able to create custom audiences out of every single person that's ever engaged with one of my competitors on LinkedIn. So any person that likes or comments, I can put them in a collective group and then create a custom audience to target those people. If you love that guy's bullshit, you're gonna love mine. That's the concept, and we all can do that. This takes about 20 minutes to set up, and the problem is because, morals, I guess, people are like, scary. But the reality is this stuff works. I'm going after audiences that want to buy my shit. And you can do that too, really easily. Some data enrichment tools that come from using scraping tools like Phantom Buster are out there. Danalyze is probably one of the more popular ones right now. I'm a huge fan of using Snov or Snovio, depending on where you're from. This allows me to basically scrape profiles for email addresses and put them in action sequences so I'm hitting them after they've already engaged with my stuff. I can see when every single person is engaged, therefore, I can hit these people with a follow-up email that says, hey, saw that you were checking out our stuff. Sure, I'd love to talk to you about this stuff. And the reality is it's pertinent, it's timely, and it totally works. I'm down to my last 2 minutes, so I don't know, I'll go into something that's short. Way too many slides, sorry guys. Yeah, okay, last couple of slides. So I think we have to look at social media marketing with a grain of salt in general. If you take a look at what's happening with your analytics or within, I don't know, something in the way of whatever your CRM is, and you have something built out for attribution, you can see where the most conversions come from. If you're getting 3% of your total traffic and 3% of that total traffic are conversions, then you're looking at a much smaller area where most of your engagement is coming from is probably organic in general. So stop fucking around with platforms that don't work. If everybody says you have to be on social media, ask them why. Am I getting more traffic from there? Am I getting more deals, more conversions, more people that are handing out their credit card saying, please give me your product or service? If not, stop doing it. The reality is we all continue to do this stuff because we've been told we have to. Or somebody at the very top is saying, well, what's going on with social media? Fuck social media. I got more going on in organic. And we need to start looking at these things in reality. So my focus is on conversions and revenue. And if more revenue is coming through on organic, then let's play ball. Or if you can actually point to social media and say this is actually working, or our paid models are doing significantly better, then step on the gas pedal and start focusing on that. Don't put time into stuff that doesn't matter. And I think that's so powerful and so important because we all waste time and repetition on these things that don't always get where it's going. Last little bit is putting in the work. The only reason that I've learned this shit is I've tried different things. I can't tell you how many other people I meet, especially coming out of really great schools that are like, I know all this stuff theoretically. It's like, well, yeah, all right, fucking show me. It's like, no, I just know the theory. The reality is if you test out these tools, if you get involved with these things, you actually play with them, you start getting better as a marketer, and you make yourself irreplaceable in the next 5, 10, 15 years. The only people that aren't winning are the ones that don't try. So that is about it for me. Those are my 4 different projects. Again, if you want the slides, feel free to connect with me on the old LinkedIn, but thank you for having me.
Thank you, Taylor.